So that calling comes with it a dependence on God, not to show off our own human wisdom and pride and things like that. Verse 18, Paul says, for the message of the cross is foolishness. The preaching of the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved. I could camp out there for a while. For those of us who are being saved. How many of you know salvation is an ongoing process? Those of us who are being saved, it is the power of God. He says, the preaching, the story, the message of the cross of Christ, he says, is sheer absurdity, foolishness, folly to those who perish. It's foolishness. And he's talking about those who are dying on hell, those who are perishing. But let me say this: spiritual things cannot be discerned by unredeemed people. We understand that. Okay, that's a given. We understand that. But let me say this: spiritual things cannot be understood by people who are backslid as well. Because when if we fall to a backslidden condition, then once again we've fallen back over into darkness. Darkness clouds our mind. Darkness clouds our spirit. And so the revelation is not there. Now, let me say this. There are those who have walked with God, who have done some great things with God and had a great relationship with God and had great revelation from God. They fell back. They backslid. They turned their back on God. That doesn't mean they forgot what was revealed to them before. What was revealed to them before, they remembered, they can retain. But they can't go in any further revelation because the darkness is going to hinder it. The darkness is going to blind them and bind it up. And does that make any sense? I hope it does. It does to me. Anyway, spiritual things cannot be discerned by an undiscerned or a non-spiritual mindset and an unredeemed mindset. And so the cross, even though people have even backslid on the Lord and need to come back, the ultimate thing is the cross has to be preached just the same. Because again, it's the message of the cross is the power of God, not my preaching. Not anyone else's preaching. That's not the power of God of salvation. It's the preaching of the message. It's deliverance of the message of the cross. It's the message of the cross that delivers. Amen? It's the message of the cross that delivers. So we preach that message. We may not know who in our midst, whether it's a big crowd, small crowd, if it's somebody who's saved, who's not saved, we may not know who is there who can take in and receive that revelation that's needed. Our job is to preach the gospel. And let God take care of the rest. Amen. Another lesson I learned some years ago as a young minister. I used to rely on the expressions of people, on facial expressions, when I was preaching the word. I used to, and you know, when I was a young evangelist, it wasn't anything. I mean, we had crowds of people, and we had altars would fill up, and people be getting saved and all. And I didn't know anything. I sure didn't know. I don't think I knew as much as I know now. I didn't know anything except get up and deliver the word. Maybe I need to get back to that as well. But I didn't know anything except get up and preach what the Lord gave. And God honored it, and people moved, and altars filled up, and all these things took place. And I didn't know anything about what I'm telling you this morning. I didn't know anything about that stuff. I just knew preach the word, preach the gospel. And God honors the word. It's not the instrument, it's the message. It's the message of the cross. And I learned, but I used to depend on people's facial expressions. And so one night, one of those services came along, and no one moved. No one came to the altar. No one got saved. Because I thought when I preach, every time I preach, somebody's supposed to get saved. You know, because I was preaching. It's supposed to happen, you know. That's the kind of, that's youth, that goes along with youth, I reckon. But I thought when I preached, something's supposed to happen. Well, nothing happened that night. Nobody moved. I mean, it was dry as last year's bird nest. Got in the van feeling whooped, tail tucked between my legs, and I just began to question the Lord. What happened? Why did no one respond? I felt like it was a good word. No one responded. Nobody did anything. And God reminded me then. He said, you depended too much on the facial expressions. You know, if you depend on people's facial expressions, you can miss a lot of things. Because what I would do is when I was preaching and people were smiling, or they were amening, or they were seeming to be enjoying it, of course that eggs you on. It does kind of encourage you and eggs you on a little bit. But if somebody's sitting there kind of sober and kind of, no facial expressions, you're thinking, well, they ain't getting it, or they ain't receiving it. They may be receiving a whole lot more than those people who are shouting you down. They may be thinking and receiving a whole lot more than those people who are, all walking the pews and everything. And that was a lesson that God taught me. Quit depending on people's facial expressions. Stop looking at the facial expressions. You don't know what I'm speaking to them through their facial expressions. So that's been many, many, many moons ago. I haven't depended on facial expressions since then.